Okay, so my name is Kit Poliano, and I'm the graduate dean and a professor of biological sciences. And I am really pleased to welcome you all here today to the Grad Slam finals at UC San Diego. After today's competition, the winner of our event will go up to San Francisco to compete in the system-wide finals of the Grad Slam at the LinkedIn headquarters. This is a fantastic event that helps our students really convey the impact of the research that we do here at UC San Diego to the general public. And you'll hear today some remarkable stories and scientific discoveries that are conveyed in a really simple to understand short format, despite the fact that they are using a wide array of the cutting edge techniques that we're known for here at UC San Diego. So to start, before I introduce our all-star student cast, I'd like to introduce our equally all-star set of judges. So first of all, I'd like to welcome Barbara Bry, and if you could wave so everybody knows who you are. Barbara is the San Diego City Council President Pro Tem, and she represents the San Diego's first City Council district and serves as chair of the Committee on Budget and Government Efficiency. She also serves as the Vice Chair of Public Safety and Livable Neighborhoods Committee and is a member of both the Committee on Rules and the Committee on Economic Development and Intergovernmental Relations. She's been in office since December 12th, 2016, and she's also an innovator and a high-tech entrepreneur and a community leader. She has a master's degree in business from Harvard University, and she was the founding team of several high-tech companies. And she's also the first associate director of Connect and the founder of Athena San Diego, the leading organization for women in the San Diego high-tech and life sciences community. So she is really a major figure in our world here, in our ecosystem at UC San Diego. And I thank you for joining us here today. Our second judge is Diane Forbes-Berthoud. She's our, and if you could just turn around and wave to the audience. Diane is our Assistant Vice Chancellor for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, and she has over 22 years of experience working in higher education and nonprofit and government. She has a proven record of success in organizational community and development, communication and development, strategic planning, and assessment of the impact of equity, diversity, and inclusion initiatives on campus. And her current responsibilities include strategic planning around the really critical area of diversity, equity, and inclusion for the whole campus. And she serves as the liaison to human resources and leads diversity-focused community engagement and campus-wide initiatives. And so I really am grateful for Diane to being here and also pleased to have her on the campus to lead these important campus-wide initiatives. So thank you. The next two, I'd like to introduce Sue and Steve Hart, if you can wave. Sue and Steve are alumni of UC San Diego, and in fact, they met here when they were both students in the mathematics department. Steve received his master's degree in 1980, and Sue went on to earn her doctorate in 1986. Steve is the co-founder of Viasat, which all of us here in this room know is a leading manufacturer of satellite and wireless technology. And he's played a big role in recruiting UC San Diego to Viasat. And the company recently gave a major gift to the campus as well, to the Arthur C. Clarke Center for Humanities and the Center for Human Engagement, Imagination. The Heart's service to UC San Diego spans many years, and they are really committed supporters of the campus. And I have come to know them through many of my events since becoming dean. They are among the first donors to the Alumni Leadership Scholarship. And they also support the Clarion Writers Workshop, which forms a unique workshop for creative writing that draws rising literary stars from across the country to UC San Diego. And they are major supporters. So thank you so much for joining us here today. We're happy to have you. Finally, I'd like to introduce Jeff Hollett, who is, who is UC San Diego's Grad Slam champion from 2017. And I was lucky enough to be able to go with Jeff up to the system-wide competition, and his research presentation was just spectacular, and he's developing better ways to provide birth control to women in third world or developing nations that provides really time-lapse release of these drugs using nano needles. It's really very interesting work. And after, I invite you to ask how he injured himself, since I can't do that up on this stage. Okay. All right, so that is our all-star cast of judges. And so what will happen here today is that, oh, yes. Oh, my goodness. Oh, I am terrible. Oh, no. Okay. Yeah. So, so I'm really pleased to introduce Paul Yu, who is the provost of Revelle College. Paul is also an engineering professor, and he has led Revelle College for probably the last several years, and he's the leader of the Council of Provosts. And through his leadership in Revelle College, he's developed new programs to help our transfer students and our new freshmen adapt to UC San Diego, and he's had a major role in our ongoing efforts to ensure student success. So Paul, thank you very much for joining us. It's a pleasure. Okay. All right. Okay. Our first Grad Slam participant. Oh, let's go through. Can we go to the next slide, or do I need to hit? That one. No. Oh, thanks. I prefer to do that. Okay. I'm a biologist, so, you know, computers, I have an uneasy relationship at times. Okay, here are the Grad Slam rules. Each presenter is aiming for a 3-minute talk, and points will be deducted for times that end before 2 minutes and 57 seconds, or that go longer than 3 minutes and 3 seconds. So as you can tell, these students have practiced their talks for months and have them down, and they know the timing, and they know exactly what to say and when to say it and how long those dramatic pauses need to be to bring home their point. The timer will begin when the presenter speaks or otherwise engages the audience. That could be interesting. And the judges will be given a few moments to score and add comments for each finalist. And then after we run through our students, we'll give the judges a few minutes to score, and I will talk with each candidate, and then we'll announce the winner shortly thereafter. Okay, so good luck to all the students, and good luck to the judges in the difficult task of picking the winner today. Okay, all right, I am ready. Okay, so our first student contestant is Eileen Moreno, who's a PhD student in biological sciences, and her thesis advisor is Professor Shelley Halpane.
This is Junior Seau, San Diego native and NFL Hall of Famer for his 20-plus years in the NFL, 13 of which he spent as a San Diego Charger. As a result of the repeated head trauma he endured in his profession, Junior suffered from chronic traumatic encephalopathy, known as CTE. CTE is a progressive disease of the brain that leads to dementia, memory loss, and depression. Junior Seau lost his battle with CTE, and in recent years we have discovered dozens of other players of high-impact sports also suffer from this disease. So what's happening to these players' brains? When the head experiences a trauma, the brain swells. This swelling restricts blood flow to the brain and limits the amount of oxygen being delivered to the individual neurons. This is a crisis for structures inside of our neurons called mitochondria. Mitochondria are responsible for making all the energy our brains need to function, but they require oxygen to do it. We can think of it as the same way a car requires gas to run. Mitochondria require oxygen to make energy. So when there is less oxygen, mitochondria produce less energy, and this can lead to cell death. We already know that damaged mitochondria are involved in the late-term responses to CTE, but we don't know what mitochondria are doing immediately after a head trauma, or how repeated head trauma can make this mitochondria damage worse and lead to CTE. My work is to understand exactly when and how mitochondria first start responding to a head trauma. And I've begun to do this using a live cell imaging approach. What you are looking at here are mitochondria inside of a living neuron that dramatically change shape when deprived of oxygen, similar to what happens in a head trauma. If you look once more and focus where the arrow is pointing, you'll see a long mitochondria structure changes into multiple fragmented spheres when deprived of oxygen. I am looking to investigate the exact mechanisms that regulate this shape change to see if I can connect it to less energy production and the development of CTE over time. It is our hope that if we can understand the earliest events that are going on in the immediate responses to a head trauma, that somehow we can connect it to the development of CTE over time. You can imagine this would be valuable in applications not only applicable to CTE, such as car crash patients, stroke patients, and other diseases that involve the brain. Hopefully one day we will be able to prevent this terrible disease to protect the brains of beloved players, but also the general population. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you.
Thanks.
So while the judges fill out their scorecards, I get to have a little conversation with you. Thank you for your great talk.
Cool.
That was really fun. I was wondering when you decided you first wanted to go to graduate school and embark on this journey.
Oh, that's a good question.
PhD.
Actually, so I come from, I'm first generation college and first generation science, anything. And so I didn't even know that someone could be a scientist. And then in undergrad, I had a great professor who told me about what science was and really said, you're asking questions that are very research driven. So as a junior in college, I changed my major and I jumped into a research lab and started getting my feet wet, and I really enjoyed it. And they were like, hey, you can go to grad school. So
Oh, that's great.
yeah.
Where were you in undergrad?
At Cal State LA.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
welcome to UC San Diego.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here. What's your favorite thing about the campus that you found so far?
Probably the coffee cart.
Coffee cart, yes!
Yeah.
Coffee cart, we all love coffee.
Yeah.
That's great. So what is on your bucket list?
One bucket list would be to see the Northern Lights.
Yeah.
It's very cold though there. I'm born and raised in California, so I don't know. I probably have to like pop in for a minute and then leave.
Sounds great.
yeah.
Okay. All right. What are your favorite things to do when you're not in the lab?
I have a 11-month-old husky,
Aww.
and she keeps me sane. So love to play with her and love hanging out with my cohort. I have a really awesome group of cohort mates, and they're amazing.
That's awesome. What's your dog's name?
Willow.
Willow.
Yeah.
You have to take Willow to see the Northern Lights. Huskies
Yeah.
like the cold,
She-
right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, good. All right, how are we doing? All right, thank you very much. Okay, so our next contestant is Gaurav Agrawal, who's a bioengineering student in the lab of Professor Shiny Varghese. So welcome to Grad Slam.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cancer has become a global epidemic. Did you know that it's expected now that 1 in every 3 Americans will develop cancer at some point in our lifetimes? And globally, the numbers are worse. And since we just don't know when or where cancer is going to develop in our bodies, as scientists, I believe we must focus our energies on developing effective medications to fight the diseases that we know are coming. Unfortunately, cancer drug development is no simple task. Pharmaceutical companies currently spend 10 to 15 years and upwards of $3 billion developing and testing a single cancer drug. And despite this immense investment, over 90% of drugs still end up failing before ever reaching patients. So you might be puzzled. Why is this failure rate so high? Well, in large part, it has to do with the current drug testing methods themselves, which are inadequate. These include testing drugs on cells in a plastic dish or in animals, such as mice. Now, do either of these two mimic a human to you in any way? No, of course not. And it's no wonder that so many drugs that pass these first two stages ultimately fail in humans. What if there was a drug testing system that better mimicked the complexity of the human body? Well, in my research, I have focused on developing such a platform, and I think it's going to help us find some promising new medications. I have developed a device that houses small pieces of liver, heart, and cancer tissues made entirely from human cells. And when you link these three individual devices together into one continuous system, we call this the human body on a chip system. In this system, tissues can actually communicate with one another through a fluidic circuit that we have built that mimics the blood vessel network in our bodies that connects all the organs and tissues of our own bodies. And with this dynamic system, we can look at not only how effective a drug is against the cancer by looking at how much the cancer might grow or shrink, but we can also look at the damaging side effects of the cancer drugs. For example, irregular or abnormal heartbeats. Moreover, we've actually been able to demonstrate with our system some clinically accurate results. In fact, using a common cancer drug that is known to only work once it's been metabolized and activated by the liver, we have shown that when that drug is tested on cancer cells in a dish, the drug fails to work and the cancer continues to grow. However, when you test that exact same drug in the human body on chip system that we have built, the drug indeed gets metabolized and activated before proceeding on to destroy the cancer altogether. This is the correct response as seen in human patients today who take this drug. And this highlights the importance of the complete body-on-chip approach, which is missing entirely from the Petri dish model. Moreover, as compared to animals, our system is about 50 times cheaper than a standard mouse, and it takes just days to develop as compared to weeks and weeks of breeding and nurturing mice. So we hope that our system will be able to revolutionize cancer drug development by reducing our need and reliance on animals. Ultimately, my goal is to help democratize drug screening in order to expedite the discovery of cancer drugs and quickly find the cures that we need for a brighter and healthier future. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you. That was awesome.
Thank you.
So what's your favorite thing about bioengineering?
Oh, man. Just like the wide breadth of opportunities within the space, and just there's so many things you can do from drug development all the way to medical devices and diagnostics. It's just a never-ending field that's always evolving. Yeah.
And so when did you first know that that's what you wanted to do?
I don't know. I did it for undergrad, and I don't know, it was just like a hot new major. So I went into it, and I didn't really know what I was doing. And I thought it was pretty cool, so I continued it for grad school, and here I am.
Fantastic. What year are you?
I'm a fifth year now.
Fifth year, awesome. Yeah. Getting close?
Graduating in May.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's great. Okay, what are some of your favorite hobbies?
I like to be outside. I like to, well, it's kind of like all over the place. Sometimes I like to be outside, and when I'm outside, I want to just stay outside for the whole day. Otherwise, I'll gladly sit at home and watch TV all day and just watch Netflix. So I'm like a man of extremes, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. And what's your favorite thing to do in San Diego outside?
I just like to go to the beach. I'm not a big surfer or anything, but I just appreciate the openness and the beach and just being outdoors in general.
Fantastic. It's beautiful here, huh?
Yeah, it's awesome.
We're so lucky. Yeah. Okay. Anything else you want to tell us about? What's
It's a very vague question.
What's on your bucket list? Go for the bucket list.
One of my bucket list items is to become PADI certified.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so PADI certification is when you become scuba diver, certified to go open water diving as a scuba diver. Yeah. I went scuba diving once in Australia, and it was just like the most incredible experience of my life. So after that, I've always wanted to become certified.
Yeah. There's lots of people here who love to dive. It's beautiful around here.
Yeah.
It's a good option. Cool. Well, thank you. Thanks
Thank
for the
you.
great talk. Good hand. Okay, Our next student is Abigail Domer, who's a graduate student in the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry. And her research advisor is Professor Romy Amaro. And I don't know if Romy must be here, but Abigail is up there. She's quick. All right.
Causing an increase in climate and weather disasters. Predicting how the climate will change is extremely difficult, but it's imperative if we want to plan for future disasters and save countless lives. When you think about global warming, you probably think about greenhouse gases. However, these are only a part of the whole story. Clouds significantly modulate the Earth's temperature and actually cool the planet by reflecting solar energy back into space. If you've ever seen your bathroom mirror fog up after a hot shower, then you already know intuitively how clouds form. Hot water vapor hits the cool mirror surface and condenses into, essentially, a liquid cloud droplet. In fact, clouds can only form when there's a surface available. But we obviously don't have bathroom mirrors floating around in the sky to form clouds. So what kind of surface am I talking about? The answer is aerosols. Aerosols are tiny particles like dust and smoke that float around in our atmosphere and seed cloud development. The problem is, not all aerosols form clouds, and we don't really know what makes some better at forming clouds than others. And this makes it impossible for us to include them in our climate models. The largest uncertainty associated with our current predictions comes from sea spray, swirling behind me in blue, which is the focus of my research. Sea spray aerosols contain an enormous amount of chemical complexity, and they're nearly impossible to determine structurally through experiments. So I'm using computers to run the first ever simulations of an entire sea spray particle. Each particle is coated with oils and fats, also known as lipids, which are shown behind me in red. I'm studying these lipids to tease out insights into what drives cloud development. Do the lipids slide across each other like a liquid oil, or do they pack together like solid butter? And most importantly, how might these surfaces interact with incoming water vapor as it gets ready to condense into a cloud droplet? The answers to these questions can be combined with experimental data to improve our predictive models. And this can in turn help us better understand and prepare for the environmental challenges to come, and maybe start to reverse the devastating impacts we already see.
Thank you very much. That's
Thank
awesome.
you.
How did you know you wanted to work on aerosols?
I didn't. I never even studied atmospheric chemistry until I got to UCSD, and I worked for Kim Prather for a little bit. And she's just phenomenal. She's so inspirational. So I just kind of fell in love with them.
That's awesome. When did you decide you wanted to go to graduate school? You got a PhD.
Well, I think I decided originally to go because I didn't know what else to do. And I actually ended up taking 2 years off in the middle.
Yeah.
And I taught for a couple of years.
Oh, that's great.
And I really enjoyed that. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to come back to graduate school so that I can teach.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's great. Where did you teach?
I taught 1 year at a local high school.
Yeah.
And then I worked as an adjunct at Mesa College and Palomar College.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it was
That's
really
great.
fun. Yeah.
Teaching is a fabulous way to reach a lot of people. It's fantastic. So tell me what you like to do when you're not in the lab.
I do a lot of yoga, and I guess I also do art and read books.
Great, that's good.
It's a fun time.
Are you an animal lover?
Yes, I have cats.
Ah, yeah. What's the craziest thing your cat's ever done? We'll focus on the cats now.
Oh, one time they got stuck in a wall.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, my cats have done that too.
But they crawled in this little hole, and I thought that I lost them.
Oh, no.
But then we pulled the panel off the wall, and there were just cats staring at me.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
So.
All right. Thank you.
Cool. Okay. Oh, I fucked up.
Okay, our next graduate student star is Aurora Lagatuta. She is a graduate student in theater and dance, and her advisor is Liam Clancy. So welcome.
I love seeing dances which feature people of all shapes and sizes moving together. But throughout my own professional dance career, I did not see this kind of diversity or inclusion. The New York Times published an article, Why We Don't Dance Anymore, in which it explains that in just the past 2 decades, there's been a significant decrease in diverse and intergenerational dancing, and instead, an increase in people sitting and watching dance on screens. This is why I do the research that I do. I create dances with people of all ages, abilities, and backgrounds. These are photos from a work which featured 20 dancers ages 7 to 77. In this work, a professor danced with a former prostitute, and an autistic teenager danced with a proud grandpa. In order to create a dance with movers of so many backgrounds, I've created simple dance practices, such as blind trust walking, in which one partner leads and the other blindly follows, or gentle touch of giving and receiving weight with another, or using imagery such as water to activate new ways of moving the body in space. And what I have found is that the benefits of this work far exceed just making a cool dance performance. I've collected thorough feedback from all of the past dancers over the last 3 years. These are the 7 most commonly used words by the past 68 dancers. What I was surprised to find is that the dancers not only valued an increase in their health and physical ability and body confidence, but how transformational it was to dance with people that they would not normally talk to. As one dancer, Manuel, said, he found the whole experience life-changing, and at 65, he doesn't say that often. What this also implies in my own field is that as the accessibility of dance broadens, so too does its potential to connect people of difference. This past summer, I took this work to Japan, where dancers with conflicting political opinions created a dance together. The dancer in the blindfold, Sanai, shared that at first, she was untrusting of some of the other dancers, but she kept dancing. And as she moved, she found a kinder relationship with her own body. She said that as she felt that she belonged in her body, it was easy to belong with the rest of the group, who in the end felt like family. Now, these personal experiences demonstrate the far-reaching potential of this work to bring communities together dancing. Because I believe that when we breathe and move and dance together, our physicality is no longer something that can divide us, but rather the very thing that can unite us. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's very nice. How did you first know you wanted to go to an MFA program? in theater and dance?
I, again, also really enjoy teaching, and getting an MFA is a way to help you teach more. I teach every quarter here at UCSD.
Wonderful.
So I really enjoy that.
That's great.
Yeah.
And did you come straight to graduate school after undergrad?
No. I took 11 years off and danced and toured.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I did a lot of work in Europe, and then came back here to go to school.
Fantastic. And how did you come up with your idea for your thesis project?
I don't think I came up with it. I think it was just in response to the world that I live in, and the people, as a dancer, I meet people all the time that tell me they'd like to dance, and they feel that they can't. And I think they have a body, and so of course they can. And actually tonight is opening night for a show that I'm doing at La Jolla Playhouse with 22 dancers. So I'm running over there after this.
Okay, well, great. Well, enjoy.
Yeah. No, thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you very much. Okay. So our next student participant is Sarah Imami. She is a master's student from Biological Sciences, and her thesis advisor is Takami Komiyama. Welcome.
Imagine yourself sitting in front of your favorite meal, but you can't eat it simply because you can't feed yourself. Individuals with motor deficits, like my sister and these Parkinson's patients, face this challenge daily. And this inspired me to get into my research to understand, how is movement exactly learned? Movement, such as walking, driving, or feeding, is learned and controlled by a specific brain area called the motor cortex. And when we can't do these movements, something is going wrong in this region. But to understand what's going wrong, we need to investigate, how does the motor cortex normally function? Ideally, we could do this by doing brain surgery on a bunch of humans. Anybody up for it? Yeah, me neither. Instead, we use the next best thing, mice, because they're cheaper, easier to use, and have a lot of similarities to us, which can help because mice also have a motor cortex. And just like us, it's their command center for movement. Now, if we take a top-down view of the mouse brain and we take out this slice and we zoom in, we can appreciate that the motor cortex is right at the brain's surface. And we want to specifically look at the cells in their neurons and see, how do they work together to execute movements like feeding yourself, or in our research, pressing a lever. Throughout 2 weeks of learning, mice showed an increase in success rate, indicating that they're actually learning how to press a lever. And with that, we also saw changes in their brain. Because the motor cortex is at the brain's surface, we're able to use this amazing technology where we can literally peek into the brain and eavesdrop on the neuron's activity while the mouse is alive, behaving, and learning. And we can get so close on these neurons to see that they have these long arms with these bumps on them called spines. And spines of different neurons can connect and communicate to execute movements. And our lab has found that during learning, there's actually an increase of these bumps, these spines, meaning that there are more connections, more communication, and thus this behavioral improvement. And now, we have this as a standard. So when we create diseased brains, we can see, how does that learning deviate from normal learning? And by understanding how the normal brain functions, we will build the foundation to help individuals with motor deficits like my sister to overcome daily movement challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. That was
Thank
great.
you. Thank you.
So you're a master's student.
I am.
Were you an undergraduate here?
I was, yes, I was.
Fantastic. And what are you doing after you graduate?
I'm actually going to medical school.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yay. That's great. And you've already applied and
I
you're
have.
in that process.
Yes, I've applied. I will be starting at the end of July.
Wow, that's early.
Yeah, it's pretty early.
And where are you going?
UCLA.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And what's your, let's give her a big hand.
Thank you.
Do you have a planned area of specialty or something you'd like to do in the future?
So for the longest time, I was really interested in heart surgery, right? And then I got engaged in my research, and I was like, wow, the brain, neuroscience research is amazing. So now I'm leaning towards the brain too, but we'll see what the future holds for me.
Fantastic. Well, I hope you
you.
enjoy it.
Thank you.
It's really great. So what do you like to do when you're not studying or working in the lab?
I love enjoying the outdoors, swimming, hiking, really just anything outdoors, going to the beach.
Yeah, great. And did you always know you wanted to be a doctor?
Yes, when I was younger, there were a lot of medical issues in the family, and that's what inspired me to become so in love with medicine.
Great. Thank you. Well, I wish you all the luck, and I
you.
hope you continue your research as a medical doctor.
I really hope I do too.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Right. Make sure everybody's ready. Okay. All right. Our next student is Jessica Morton, who is a PhD student in chemistry and biochemistry, and her faculty advisor is Professor Seth Cohen. Welcome, Jessica.
The circles on this timeline of the last 5 years represent fatalities from chemical attacks in the Syrian civil war, with the largest of these circles representing over 1,000 individuals. Chemical warfare agents like VX, sarin, or sulfur mustard may sound familiar from history books or perhaps from current events, from recent assassination attempts using warfare agents to events so recent they didn't make my timeline. Last Saturday, dozens of civilians in Syria, men, women, and children, were killed in a suspected chemical attack. Our personal protective measures against these threats are inadequate. The material protecting this warfighter in her current suit and mask is essentially identical, contains the same active ingredient as it did going back to World War I. It's composed mostly of activated charcoal, which is tiny particles of carbon with even tinier channels running through. Now, these very tiny channels act as a low energy environment for passing contaminants, like those warfare agents that I mentioned. And much like me on my couch, these contaminants prefer the low energy environment and become trapped in the channels, away from the warfighter's skin or lungs, which is great, except that not every channel in this material is the correct size to trap contaminants. So there's a lot of wasted weight, creating suits and masks that are bulky, cumbersome, hot, and over time, dangerous to the warfighter. In contrast, this material, a metal organic framework, or MOF, has no wasted space. Each metal ion, shown in green, is connected in the exact same way by long, rigid linkers, leaving identical pockets of empty space throughout the material. Each of these pockets is the perfect size to trap contaminants. And because of this, we can use much less material for the same protective effect, creating suits and masks that are lighter, more comfortable, as well as safer, because the metal ion will chemically break down the warfare agent trapped inside. And this is an extra layer of protection not afforded by the activated charcoal. In my research, I combine these fine, powdery MOF particles with stretchy, flexible plastics, some of which are already used in clothing. The plastic form-fits around the particles, gluing the two together into a usable composite that we can then implement directly into a suit or mask. I combine different particles with different plastics and test the resulting composites for strength, stability, flexibility, and how well they compare to that starting MOF. Our best composites have the same great properties as the starting MOF, all those protective properties, with added function through their flexible, usable form. We're now collaborating with a group in France, combining our skill sets. They do computational research with our experimental to learn even more about these materials and make them even better. We are learning even more about how the surface of the MOF interacts with the polymer on the molecular level, and this informs our ability to design better, newer materials. By giving our warfighters the best possible technology, we give them the best possible chance of coming home safely. And I hope that the world is safer for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. It was very nice.
Thank you.
When did you first know you wanted to become a chemist?
Well, my mom is a science teacher, so science was always a thing I was interested in. And then I had a great chemistry teacher in high school. So
That's great.
Yeah.
And so did you know at that point you wanted to go to graduate school?
No. So I got done with undergrad and was totally burnt out. So I took a couple years off and I worked in industry. And I realized that the kinds of creative jobs that I wanted, I couldn't get with just a bachelor's degree. So
Yeah.
I'm here now.
That's great. What kind of company did you work in?
I was a biotech company.
Okay, great. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So
All right.
what do you like to do when you're not working in the lab?
So I'm just going to plug my organization right now. I'm the president of the Society for Women in Graduate Studies in Chemistry and Biochemistry. It's our women's group in the Chemistry and Biochemistry department. And we do all kinds of stuff, outreach, networking, professional development events. Ariana's sitting back there, has done a bunch of great communications stuff for us. Yeah, it's been a great little kind of family for the last couple of years.
That's great. Well, thank you for doing that. Forming professional networks are critical for everyone in graduate school and in your professional life moving forward. So thank you for your leadership.
Thank you.
What do you like? What else do you like to do when you're not building networks and helping others?
Just networking all the time.
Yeah, networking.
No, I do yoga on campus. So I did
Okay.
some yoga today to kind of help.
Good. That's good.
And then we have a lot of outdoors people among the finalists, but I like to stay inside and watch TV when I'm not at work.
Okay.
Shame,
That's good.
shame.
It's good. It's good for your skin here, right? Sun's bad.
Sounds bad, yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank
Please
you.
join me in thanking Jessica. Okay, our next graduate student is Nicholas Root, who is a PhD student in psychology. And his faculty advisor is V.S. Raman Chandran. And please join me in welcoming Nicholas. Thank you.
I study a neurological condition called synesthesia using data from multiple languages. 3 minutes, 3 questions. What is synesthesia? Why multiple languages? Why should you care? When most of you read the text on this slide, you see it written in black. But for about 2% of you, it looks like this. Synesthetes experience letters of the alphabet as having a consistent color. Now, by consistent, I mean a few things. Consistent across space. So if your S is purple here, it's purple there. Consistent across time. So if your H is burnt sepia today, it'll be the same burnt sepia 2 years from now. Finally, intriguingly, I mean consistent across people. So around 60% of synesthetes, for example, will tell you that A is red. Why? A is for apple, and apples are red. A is a warm sound, red is a warm color. A is the first letter of the alphabet, red is the first color of the rainbow. You could go on and on and on. But the problem with thinking like this is that these theories all make the same prediction. A should be red. And so you can't tell them apart. Well, they make the same prediction in English. In Dutch, A is for ape, and apes are brown. In Spanish, A sounds like ah. And in Korean, A is not the first letter of the alphabet. G is. Now for synesthetes, Dutch A is still red. Spanish A is still red. But Korean G is red. And so by studying synesthesia in multiple languages, we can figure out the rule. A is red because it's the first letter of the alphabet. Now, hopefully many of you just find this interesting. But the rest of you might wonder why we should care about something that's rare and basically benign. Well, we can use synesthesia to study a much more fundamental process, reading. See, in the brain, synesthesia happens when the letter area and the color area get wired together by accident. And we can use this accident to our advantage. Here's how. Scientists know a great deal about how the color area of the brain is organized, in part because they've been able to study it in monkeys. We know comparably little about how the reading area works, in part because monkeys can't read. Now, we can't go sticking electrodes into human brains, but with synesthesia, we wouldn't have to. We can just ask synesthetes what color their letters are and use their responses to study how the letter area is organized. So in this way, synesthesia is a window into the brain that lets us literally see how the brain thinks about reading. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicholas. When did you first know you wanted to study the brain?
So when I was a teenager, I read a book called Phantoms in the Brain by V.S. Ramachandran. And 10 years ago, that was 10 years before I went to grad school. And then now I'm in grad school studying synesthesia with him.
That is great. So the book set you on your current path.
It did.
And you're working with him here today.
I am.
That's
Yeah.
fantastic. Thus demonstrating the importance of communicating your work to the general public. So thank you. That's great. So what do you like to do when you're not working in the lab?
When I'm not working in the lab.
Yeah, there is no, okay.
I've been cooking a lot recently. I made a pact with myself when I first joined grad school that I would learn how to cook in at least 10 different countries' cuisines. So I'm sort of working my way through that.
Fun. That sounds great. And what's on your bucket list?
The one that I put is that I would like to learn how to bake bread from scratch, like literally growing the wheat and cutting down the tree that goes into the oven. I feel like we don't get to do that anymore. We don't get to see a process from the very start to the very end.
So you'll be looking for jobs in the Midwest or someplace where wheat grows well.
Or Finland or
something. Or maybe
something.
corn. You could do cornbread. Okay, that's great. Fantastic. When did you know you wanted to go to graduate school? Was it as soon as you read that book?
I think it was about like maybe 2 minutes and 45 seconds after I was born, somewhere around there.
Fantastic.
And no, I've always known because I've always loved teaching and I've always wanted to teach, and this is sort of the route that you go to do that, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. It's a great life as a faculty member, I have to say. We have a lot of fun teaching our students and doing our research. So great. Thank you very much for your wonderful talk. Okay, our next student is Quinn Nguyen from Biological Sciences, and her thesis advisor is Professor and Chair Ananda Goldrath. So please join me in welcoming Quinn.
Hi, today I'd like to introduce to you a special group of cells that are critical in helping defend your body against infection and cancer. When your body becomes infected, a foreign invader will enter, and a group of cells called T cells will recognize this invader. The T cells will then multiply in number and become activated effector T cells. And these effector T cells can go on to kill the invader or recruit other cells to come help it in fighting off the infection. Eventually, a couple weeks later, you get better and the infection is cleared. And the majority of your effector T cells will die, though a small population remains as memory T cells. These memory T cells persist in your body for months to years after the initial infection. circulating through the blood and the tissue, always remembering what that original invader looks like so that it can rapidly attack it if it sees it again. My work is interested in a special group of memory T cells called tissue-resident memory T cells. These cells are unlike the other memory T cells because they do not circulate. In fact, when they enter the tissues, they stay there for the rest of their lives and possibly the rest of your lives. We're finding out that these tissue-resident memory T cells are becoming frontline defense against reinfection and, more importantly, very key in fighting off cancers, especially cancers that are localized to tissues, such as skin cancer, liver cancer, or brain cancer. So we want to understand how these cells are doing it so we can turn up their activity and make sure they're more effective in fighting off infection and cancer. However, it's not all good, because these cells, tissue-resident memory T cells, have also been implicated in autoimmune tissue-specific diseases. In this case, the cells are too active and they cause massive damage when they recognize things they shouldn't. This can lead to things like neurodegenerative diseases in your brain, asthma in your lungs, diabetes in your pancreas, and rashes on your skin. So here, we want to turn down their activity and create better treatments for autoimmune diseases. So the question I'm asking is, what makes a normal T cell become a tissue-resident memory T cells? What brings them into tissues, what keeps them there, and what helps them survive? Like I mentioned, understanding these signals can help us make better therapeutics, new vaccines, new cancer drugs, new autoimmune drugs. More importantly, many of our drugs currently are systemic. They target things everywhere, leading to side effects that you don't want. But if you target a certain group of cell in a specific tissue, you ensure that you can limit the side effects and make sure it's safer for all patients. Thank you.
Thank you, Quinn. That was very nice. Can you tell me a little bit about your journey to graduate school?
So I actually come to graduate school by ways of medical school. I'm here from the MD PhD program. And so I was very interested in pediatric cancers, and I've always been. And so I purposely chose a lab that would allow me to work on kind of the next stage in treating cancers, which is cancer immunotherapy, and as I mentioned, using these T cells to really fight off and using our own body. You know, I really am interested in how we can use things that we already have instead of putting foreign stuff in that seems to be causing so much damage.
That's great. And for the members of our audience that aren't familiar with the MD PhD program, can you tell us a little bit about how that program is organized?
Yes, so it's an 8-year program, theoretically 8 years, where you do 2 years of medical school, where it's the book learning, and then you take a break from medical school and you go and you do your PhD, theoretically in 4 years, but it can be 5 or 6, depending on your project. And then you finish that and you come back and you finish the last 2 years of medical school, and then you leave and you go to residency and further training. And so by the time you're 40, you may get your first job as a faculty at some university. But the theory is that we can really work at the interface between the bedside and the bench and really doing much more translational research.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for sharing that with us all. It's a great program. Thanks for sharing your research as well.
Thank you.
What do you like to do when you're not studying for medical school or working in the lab?
So I'm a big podcast nerd, so I listen to a lot of podcasts. It's kind of absurd how much podcasts I consume. A lot of culture podcasts, political podcasts, comedy podcasts. I like to walk a lot, so it's a good way to walk and not be bored.
Good. Can you recommend a podcast I should listen to on the way home?
Yeah, you should listen to Still Processing. Okay. It's a New York Times. They're 2 culture writers, and they just talk about how culture and technology interact with each other. But last week they had an episode about why are we all so anxious these days? Yeah. And they really get down to the bottom of it. And then they talk about self-care, which is
great.
A great way of doing it.
Well, that sounds great. What a great recommendation. Thank you very much.
Of course.
Let's give her a big hand.
What just happened?
Okay. Okay. Our next student is Daryl Brown, who's a PhD student in the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering Department. And he has 2 advisors, because 1 is not enough, Professor Vikash Gilja and Professor Tim Gentner. So please join me in welcoming Daryl.
Communication is an important part of all life on Earth. Speech, in particular, is a fundamental part of the human experience. Now, this competition wouldn't be half as entertaining if all we did was point at our slides all day. However, imagine if you're unable to speak, unable to move, literally trapped in your body, incapable of telling your loved ones how you feel, or even letting your doctors know whether or not the medications they are giving you are even working. This is the reality for many people across the globe, and it's what's known as locked-in syndrome. My research seeks to help develop a medical device or speech prosthesis that will allow these individuals to once again share their thoughts. Now, you may ask, how would something like this even work? Well, speech is a motor process. The same way that we run and jump is the same way that we speak, with our brain telling our body what to do, similar to a musician playing a cello. Only in the case of a person with locked-in syndrome, the musician's still playing, only the strings are missing and no sounds are coming out. Our strategy is to look at the musician's fingers, or more specifically, the brain's activity. However, the human brain is much more complicated than a single musician. It's more like a full-on orchestra, and so we're looking at a much simpler model. Birds. Birds are one of the few species on Earth capable of learned vocal behavior, and the way that they produce their songs is similar to the way that we produce our words. My typical research day involves putting these little guys in our lab's custom recording studio, allowing them to perform all day long, simultaneously recording both their neural activity and their vocal performance. Doing this several times with several repetitions, we're able to look at this data in this way. On the top is audio, and on the bottom is neural activity. And each color represents a different rendition of the same bird performing the same exact song. Overlapping the segments of repetition, we're able to sift through the data and find commonality in the neural signal. And commonality leads to predictability, such that you can posit that using machine learning, you can predict the next syllable the bird will sing by only looking at its neural activity. I seek to take advantage of this and develop a medical device that will predict and produce the bird's song, such that if we were to mute our birds and install this device, they will be none the wiser. They will think that my system was them themselves singing. And this system will be a powerful tool to empower scientists to ask better questions to understand how is it that our brain's able to do the things it does. We can learn complex vocalizations, and as babies no less. Further, one day, the insights learned from this device will allow a person with locked-in syndrome to once again tell their loved ones, I love you.
Thank you, Daryl. That was really great.
Thanks.
Can you tell me a little bit about your journey to graduate school?
So I've always known I wanted to go to grad school. I've always wanted to work with neuroprosthetics.
Yeah.
So my grandfather was a paraplegic, so I never got to see him walk. And so as like a little pet project as a kid, I wanted to how can I help him walk again? And so I did a little school project on the brain, and I learned that this is a very multidisciplinary problem. And so I knew that I had to go to grad school if I wanted to ever work on it.
That's great. And what led you to come to UC San Diego?
I was a part of a summer program that partnered with my undergraduate university. So I was a graduate of Howard University. And so I worked with Professor Todd Coleman, and that was a super exciting experience, and it really made me want to come here.
Oh, that's great. I'm glad you enjoyed it. We love those programs. And thank you also to the faculty, and thanks for coming to UC San Diego. What do you like to do when you're not working in the lab?
CrossFit. That's pretty much the only thing else I do.
That's good.
Yeah, so my box is actually within 10 minutes. So I go there in the morning and come in, go to lab, and go to bed.
Yeah, fantastic. And so what's the best thing about having two advisors?
They both come from very different perspectives, and it's very nice to get, they're both highly intelligent people who really are great people in their field, but they also are very good advisors and they actually do care about their students. And so it's nice to have two mentors who have my best interests in mind.
Fantastic. That's really great. Okay, well, thank you. Okay, join me in thanking Daryl. Okay, our final contestant today is Marie Adamako, who's also a biological sciences PhD student. And so please join me in welcoming Marie. Oh, her advisor is Professor Susan Golden. So please join me in welcoming Marie.
These are cyanobacteria, affectionately cyanos. 2.6 billion years ago, these tiny bacteria invented photosynthesis, pumping the atmosphere full of oxygen and changing the course of life on Earth. They're still at it today. About 30% of the oxygen in the atmosphere comes from cyanos. They're good candidates to modify to be able to produce biofuels and food supplements because they're very efficient. They eat sunlight, and they're very simple. The entire organism is just one cell. They're grown in large outdoor ponds where they can literally turn sunlight into food and fuel. Now, cyanos can live a couple of ways, either suspended in the water or in a biofilm. A biofilm is a community of microbes that attaches to a surface and starts producing a sticky matrix to protect itself, and that makes it very difficult to remove, which we're all very familiar with, because we have to brush biofilms off our teeth every day in the form of plaque. We don't know what makes cyanos choose to live in a biofilm rather than by themselves, and so that's what my research asks. How do cyanos form biofilms? Because it has practical applications. If you can find a biofilm off switch, you can prevent buildup in water treatment systems or other aquatic environments. Or if you can find a biofilm on switch, you can grow useful cyanos more efficiently and using less water than the usual methods. So to find these biofilm on or off switches, I have to look at the genes of the cyano. In my research, I have two different cyano strains. They are the same species, and they are 98% identical genetically, and yet one of them keeps the biofilm switch off. It doesn't stick to the flask when you grow it in the lab, and the other keeps the biofilm switch on. By comparing them, I can narrow down my hunt for the biofilm on or off switch genes to the 2% difference between these strains. But I still have to find the exact genes. And to do that, I'm using a very classic technique. Break it, see what happens. In each of these strains, I have a collection where each cyano cell has a different gene broken, as well as a unique DNA barcode, so I can easily track it later with sequencing. When I grow the collections, I can track which gene, if it's broken, will turn an off switch to an on switch, or vice versa. That lets me connect the gene with its function in bioformation, and maybe use that gene product to flip the biofilm switch. My approach looks at the question from two opposite directions in order to see the whole picture. And eventually, I'll be able to turn cyanobiofilms on or off with the flip of a genetic switch.
Thank you, Marie. Did you know growing up that you wanted to work on cyanobacteria?
No.
Really?
No. I very definitely fell in love with microbiology the first microbiology class I ever took and changed my major immediately.
Yay, I'm a microbiologist, so yes, of course you fell in love.
Of course I did.
And where did you take that class?
Idaho State University.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you went from there to here?
Not directly.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Tell us about your journey here.
So I took 5 years off to be a stay-at-home mom because my husband was in medical school. Yeah. Seemed like a good time.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. family and science works together. You just have to time it when it works for you and your family, right?
That's exactly right.
So good.
Yeah.
So what do you like to do in your spare time?
Well, spare time is pretty much taken up by those two little boys, so.
Play with your kids?
Yeah.
That's good.
Spend a lot of family time, and I go running. We got a lot of outdoorsy people.
Fantastic.
So
okay,
I'll join the group.
Great. What's on your bucket list?
Eileen and I have the same one. We both want to go see the Northern Lights, so I think we
Yes.
just have a buddy trip now.
Good, I think so.
With Willow.
Perfect.
Yeah, we'll bring our dog.
That sounds like fun. And your two little boys.
And well, maybe.
Okay, so please join me in thanking Marie for her great talk. Okay, so those were some amazing talks, and we will take a short break now. I'd like to invite everyone to get a drink in the back corner while our judges have the fun task of picking our winner today. And we'll reconvene in just a few minutes. Okay, our judges have completed their difficult job, and their results have been tallied. Okay. Okay, thank you for taking your seats. So our judges had a remarkably difficult time judging and picking our winners out of this group of fantastic and inspiring students. And so I'd like us, can we please just thank the judges and the speakers for just their amazing efforts here today. Thank you. It's truly inspiring to see the types of research that our students are doing and their ability to communicate it to all of us, despite the broad disparities in our fields. This is great. So what I'd like to do is I'll first announce our finalists who did not place, but nonetheless worked very hard and distinguished themselves as amazing communicators of their research projects. Each of these finalists will receive a $500 check and a certificate for their participation. Okay, so first, Marie Adomako, please come up on the stage. So please come up on the stage, and we'll line everybody up across the stage so we can have some nice photographs of our fabulous students. Congratulations, and thank you for all of your hard work. Next, Gaurav Agrawal. Congratulations. There we go. Thank you. And Daryl Brown. Congratulations. Abigail Domer. Congratulations and thank you. Sarah Imami. Congratulations. Eileen Moreno. Congratulations. Quinn Nguyen. That's okay. Congratulations. Okay. And our third place winner today is Aurora Lagututa. Congratulations. Thank you. Aurora will receive a $1,500 prize. Yay! And our second prize, it goes to Jessica Morton. Congratulations. Jessica will get a $3,000 check. Woohoo! All right. Yay! And in first prize, it has to be Nicholas Root. Congratulations. There we go. And Nicholas will receive a $5,000 prize. So please join me in congratulating all of our Grad Slam finalists. And please tune in on May 23rd. May 3rd for the Grad Slam finals, which will be telecast, and we will have the link on our Grad Division website so everybody can see Nick compete system-wide.